Okay. For the purpose of the record, we will now be starting at Daf called Amud Aleph, sorry, towards the bottom of the page. There have been recordings which have been placed on the various places where they're posted for the time which we're missing. So we have had 5 amudim have been recorded and posted. There are another 5 amudim which are missing. I will, in the next week or so, post those ones so that people will be able to go over them. But now I'd like to learn with the schedule as printed in the Amud Yomi, and therefore we'll start Daf Chav Beis Amud Aleph by the Mishnah, so we can learn Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. Okay. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Huda Omer, Im Haya Derech Rishus Rab Mafsekes, Yisal Kenen Litzdodim. If by this, when you made the passing, you have this well. When you made the passing, which by making the passing, you have created an area around the well, which is the Rishus HaYochid. If the public, the Rabbi, they go through, that's part of their road on which they pass through. So if they're passing through it, that area, so then, according to Rabbi Huda, you have to move the well, possibly, or wherever it is, you have to move the well and make the Rishus HaYochid outside the area where the Rishus HaRabim are passing through. Because if the Rabbim are passing through an area which maybe even if it's fenced off, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, and we will discuss it more a bit later, according to Rabbi Yehuda, when the public pass through even a place which is fenced off with mechitzas, so then it's the mevatel the mechitzas, and it becomes a Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, since even though you have the passing there, but since the Rabbim are passing through, so therefore the Rabbim they are mevatel the mechitzas, and it becomes a Rishus HaRabim. Therefore, you have to move the well and the mechitzas. You have to move them to the side. That's the opinion of whom? Of Rabbi Huda. You do not need to. You can leave it, even though the Rabbim are passing through, and that's the main thoroughfare of the Rabbim. It doesn't make a difference. Because it will still be considered as long as you have your mechitzas. If you have your mechitzas, it's considered Rishus HaRabim, even if the Rabbim actually pass through it, and it's part of the flow of the Rabbim. It's not battle the mechitzas. That's basically the machlekes between Rabbi Huda and the Chachamim, which we'll discuss later at much more length in the Gemara. Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Lazar. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Lazar, the Amr Tavai, both say, "Kan hoy di achal koichel shel mechitzas." Is that here? The Mishnah has the Chachamim and the Mishnah have told us the koyach of mechitzas, that even though if you have mechitzas there, the fail, if for all intents and purposes, it's a Rishus HaRabim because the Rabbim are actually passing through it. But the koyach of the mechitzas makes it to be qualified as a Rishus HaYochid and remains a Rishus HaYochid even though the public are actually passing through it. They're not about mechitzas. That's what we see in the Chacham. So the Gemara asks a question. Kan usvirale. We see that here from the Chachamim and Rabbi Yochanan, and that's how it would seem originally. It would seem that Rabbi Yochanan actually agrees with that opinion, with the opinion of the Chachamim. So kan usvirale. We see that from over here, the koyach of mechitzas, and Rabbi Yochanan agrees with that koyach of mechitzas. With Ha'amar Rabba Babachona Rabbi Yochanan, it was said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Yerushalayim ilmoled dal sesehon in olos balaylo chayovin alem Rishus HaRabim. That Yerushalayim, which was a walled city, has wall all around it. So it has mechitzas. So the Rabbi Yochanan said, if not for the fact that at night the doors close and therefore it's completely locked and there's no thoroughfare, there's no going through Yerushalayim at night. If not for that, so even though the walls are there and it has mechitzas all around, in fact, there's a Rishus HaRabim going through it, you'd be chayav in Yerushalayim because of the Rishus HaRabim. So what do we see over here? That even though you have good mechitzas, nice walled mechitzas of the city, that if the Rishus HaRabim go through it, it is mevatel the mechitzas and still has a din of mechitzas. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, that Yerushalayim, the poil is not mevatel. I'm just repeating myself. The poil is not mevatel because it's totally closed at night. But if not for that, even though you have the mechitzas, as long as you have the thoroughfare going through it, that's Rishus HaRabim going through it, it's mevatel the mechitzas. So, as the Gemara says, Elakan v'loy svirale. So yes, the Eruvin, when he says kan, that in our mission we see the koicha mechitzas. True, we see the koicha mechitzas according to the opinion of Chachamim, but Rabbi Yochanan does not agree with that because he passes like Rabbi Huda and does not pass like Chachamim, and he passes like Rabbi Huda that if the rabbim go through an area, the rabbim, the usage of the rabbim is mevatel the mechitzas. It says the Gemara, we're going to get and ask a contradiction between Rabbi Huda against Rabbi Huda and the Rabban against the Rabban. In other words, in our mission, Rabbi Huda said that the rabbim, the usage of the rabbim is battle the mechitzas, and that has to do with Rishus Rabbim. And then we're going to ask a question. We'll see they hold that the usage of the rabbim is not the battle. It's still considered the Rishus Rabbim. It's still considered Rishus Yachid, even though the rabbim go through it. It's still considered Rishus Yachid. It's a contradiction with the and similarly for the Rabbana, we'll find the Rabbana they say that if the place is used by the rabbim, then it's mevatel the mechitzas, and it has a din of Rishus Rabbim, which contradicts our Mishnah that it cannot, that the rabbim cannot be mevatel. Once you have mechitzas, even though the rabbim use it, it'll always be considered Rishus Yachid. Where's this contradiction? The Tanya, what the Bryce said, yes, around Cain on Rabbi Huda, besides the thing mentioned before, we're not going to discuss that. This is a continuation of the Bryce earlier. Yes, Cain on Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Huda says, Misha Shnei Batim B'Shnei Tzidei Rishus Rabbim. He has two houses on two sides of Rishus Rabbim, so that means he has two mechitzas because the house constitutes a mechitza. So what he has to do is he has two mechitzas already. So he's going to add a third and a fourth mechitza. He's going to make a lechi at one end of the house. He's going to make a lechi at one end. That will be the third mechitza. Then at the other end of the houses, he will make another lechi. So he'll end up having four mechitzas. It has to be the third and the fourth. And similarly, also a kaira from at each end you can make. And obviously that this Bryce says that Rabbi Huda in this Bryce will learn that the reason of kaira is because and lechi, the reason because they constitute the mechitza. A kaira or lechi itself constitutes the mechitza. Therefore, so he has now four mechitzas and the mela. So therefore, he'll be able to carry in the area which is in that area. And when he can carry in the middle between the two kairos and between the two lechas, he can carry. So he said that what did he say? That you could, this is a Rishus Rabbim, the Rabbim pass through, and nevertheless it's considered Rishus Yachid, and you can carry it in this area which is fenced up with the four mechitzas, constituted by the houses and the kairo. So it's contradictory to our Mishnah, where he said that the Rabbim are mevatel mechitzas, and what's the response of the Chacham? Chacham said. So they said to him, the Chacham said to him, yes, it's very fine, it's all fine, but you cannot make an Erev Rishus Rabbim like this. So therefore, you see the Chacham say that that the Rishus Rabbim prevents you from the place in the area becoming a Rishus Yachid, even though it has these mechitzas around, the heker all around. And so you see that the Rishus Rabbim is mevatel. The Rishus Rabbim is mevatel the mechitzas according to Chacham, which is a contradiction to our Mishnah, which said that they said that the Rabbim cannot be mevatel mechitzas. Kasha, the Rabbi Huda, kasha, the Rabban. Right. So now the Gemara is answering. The Rabbi Huda, the Brit kasha. There's no question. There's no kasha. Basically, the answer is going to be that both Rabbi Huda and the Rabbanon, they both agree that that if you have good enough mechitzas, then they both agree that if you have good enough mechitzas, so then the rabbim they cannot be mevatel the status of the Rishus Yachid, even though the rabbin goes through it. It will not be mevatel the status of the Rishus Yachid if you have good mechitzas. Now, what they will be arguing is what is considered good enough mechitzas that the rabbim cannot be mevatel. So the Buddha the kasha hos and the gestei mechitzas malis hoch like gestei mechitzas malis. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda, he also agrees the principle that if there's proper enough mechitzas, then the rabbim cannot be mevatel the mechitzas. But what does he consider proper enough mechitzas? He considered in the quality of the mechitzah. Therefore, since the him is the quality of the mechitzah is what makes it that the rabbim cannot be mevatel it. So he says, as long as you have two proper mechitzas, not mechitzas which are chveis, tziras ha-pesach, maises with all, I don't know, two walls, normal walls, not, we find also in the Gemara other things, not like a slope or a slant, which is the siddur mechitza. All these things are not like two proper walls. So that two houses that constitute two proper walls are when you have two quality mechitzas. Once you have two quality mechitzas, so then the rabbim cannot be mevatlet. In our case, in the case of the pasin, why does Rabbi Yehuda say that the rabbim is mechitzas? In the case of the pasin, you actually have four mechitzas around it as well. The problem is these mechitzas, there's no mechitzas. Everybody's walking through those mechitzas. Okay, halacha is considered mechitzas. Those types is not quality mechitzas. Since it's not quality mechitzas, if the rabbim are going through, then it's mevatel mechitzas. Now, the Rabbanon, they have a slightly different. Rabbanon namle kasha hocha shom arba mechitzas hocha lekasha shom dal mechitzas. According to Rabbanon, is not a kasha because here you have four mechitzas. According to Rabbanon, they also agree that sometimes the rabbim can be mevatel mechitzas. They also sometimes can be mevatel mechitzas. But if you have the full din of mechitzas, what I mean by the full din of mechitzas, you have four mechitzas, the full complement. If you have the full complement of mechitzas, then the rabbim cannot be mevatel. And therefore, it's very important to remember that according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you have a full complement, you have four mechitzas. If you have four mechitzas, according to Yehuda, the rabbi will still be able to mevatel. To him, according to Yehuda, you need solid mechitzas, then the rabbi cannot mevatel. But the full complement, I think this principle is important to remember more further. The full complement, meaning to all the four mechitzas, even if you have four mechitzas, that according to Yehuda is not sufficient to even if you have a full complement of mechitzas, if the rabbim go through it, they will be able to turn it into Rosh Rabbim, unless, like I say, it's proper normal walls, like mentioned. But according to Rabbanon, they don't care, even though you have spaces and mices, all these things. Once it's halachically, it's considered a mechitzah, and you have four of them. If you don't have four, then, like we say over here in the Shtroks Rabbim, you don't have four, then taka the rabbim are mevatel mechitzas. If you don't have four, because that's the Shtroks Rabbim, you don't have two walls, and b'chal kair is mishum heker, and the kair says b'chal not considered mechitzah, and probably lechi, whatever, for some reason, also is not considered a good enough mechitzah over here. But if you have four mechitzas, even though, like I said before, they're not so complete, normal, regular mechitzas, as long as you have the number four, then the rabbi cannot be mevatel. That's wonderful. Okay. Now we come to another din. So let's remember that principle of Rabbi Yehuda Rabban as we go further. Eretz Yisrael, in Chayom Alem Shum Shusarab. He said, Eretz Yisrael, there's no Shusarabim there. It's quite obvious that this opinion will not fit in with what was mentioned before, that Yerushalayim was mentioned before Yerushalayim, if not for the fact that that it's closed, it would be considered Shushabim. Let me say it clearer. The opinion before of this statement that we're talking about Yerushalayim, that it needs the doors locked, etc. That opinion is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, because whereas this is going, this fits in more to the Rabban. This opinion fits into the day of the Rabban. Okay, so let's not assume that the two don't need to fit together. These two members of Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yitzchak and Eretz Yisrael ein chayov lem shub shusrab. Eretz Yisrael, you're not higher because of you're not high with Rosh Hashanah. There's no Rosh Hashanah Eretz Yisrael. Yosef Rabdimi v'Omar lo Hoshmaitzer. So Rabdimi was sitting and saying this memra of Rabbi Yechanan that there's no Rosh Hashanah Eretz Yisrael. Omna Abai Rabdimi says, what's going on over here? My time. What's the reason why there's no Rosh Hashanah? Why there's no Rosh Hashanah Eretz Yisrael? Okay, the emes is maybe we can find mechitzas in Eretz Yisrael. What are the mechitzas in Eretz Yisrael? The whole of Eretz Yisrael is surrounded by mechitzas. Let's say Mishun the Makav of Sulam of the Tzur. Sulam is a ladder of Tzur. That's it's an elevation there in Tzur. Tzur is a Tyre. It's now in Lebanon. So you have the elevation there in Tyre, and so therefore that's considered mechitzah for Eretz Yisrael. I'm assuming that this means this basically there's all the ranges of the mountains there in the north of Eretz Yisrael, from starting from Tzur, so that is considered a mechitza. So you have the elevation from Tzur on the north, and then you have by the Jordan River, I guess in the east, and then you have the sea in the west, and then you have like the cliff or the ditch of Gror. Gror is in the south. Gror is the south where Plishtim is. So there you have like a ditch type of situation or cliff situation, and there's also 10 tefachim. So therefore, in the north you have a mechitza by Tzur, and then you have the south you have the mechitza by Gror, and therefore it means that you have Eretz Yisrael is surrounded by mechitzas, and Eretz Yisrael is surrounded by mechitzas. So therefore, there's no what's it called? There's no Rosh Hashanah in Eretz Yisrael because you have mechitzas. So if that's the explanation why, this is an explanation why there's no Rosh Hashanah in Eretz Yisrael, and like we said, this will follow the Rabbanon. That once you have mechitzas, even though the Rabbim are there, you do have a Rabbim there, still it's not mevatel the mechitzas. So if that's the case, that's the question of Abaya. So if it's why is it Eretz Yisrael, we can expand it to all over the world. Let's see. Starting off with Babel. Babel nami makef lo poras mehaigisa with the gelas mehaigisa. You have the Babel is between the two rivers of the Chidekel and I can't remember what's called in English, and the Pros, the Euphrates, and so it's between the two rivers. So therefore, it's mamish has mechitzas. Then you have the sea at the bottom. So so you have four mechitzas. So therefore, in Babel there's no Rosh Hashanah. So where are you going to get Rosh Hashanah? Okay, and not only that, the kul alma nakiv nami makiv okionas the cloud. The whole world is being surrounded by the ocean, and since we hold the Rabbanon that the Rabbim is not mevatel the mechitzas, so therefore there's no such thing as a Rabbim because you have mechitzas around every piece of land. So therefore, obviously, it's a kasha. So therefore, we can't say. So obviously, that these type of mechitzas are over covering such a large area with a Rabbim being within that, it's not considered shusiyach. So obviously you cannot use this principle. You cannot use this principle because if you use this principle, the fact that you have the mountains of Tzor in the north and the cliffs of Gror in the south, then there would be no Rosh Hashanah anyway. And Tosfos explains why be'emes is it still considered Rosh Hashanah in all these different places? Because interesting, he says because even though we have the principle according to Rabbanan that the Rabbim are not mevatel mechitzas. What type of mechitzas are the Rabbim not mevatel if it's man-made mechitzas? Natural mechitzas, if there's a Rabbim in the Rabbim there, they will be mevatel. So this cloud, the Rabbim, according to Rabbanon, the Rabbanon who hold that the Rabbim are not mevatel for mechitzas. So if it's man-made, that's true. But if it's natural mechitzas, then even the Rabbanon will agree that the Rabbim are mevatel the mechitzas. Okay, so therefore, mechitzas that's can't be the reasoning because you can't say that's the reason why Eretz Yisrael is not considered Shus Rabbim. Dilma, so he suggested. Abaya suggested maybe he's saying the elevations and the inclines in Eretz Yisrael, which is very difficult to walk to walk there. So in the elevations and the inclines in Eretz Yisrael, that does not have a din of Rosh Hashanah. So even though the Rabbim will be using maybe, even though the Rabbim will be using those areas, but the steep inclines, the steep elevations, that does not have a din of Rosh Hashanah. But not the entire Eretz Yisrael. The rest of Eretz Yisrael, yes, there is a din of Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi responds to him, kakafne chazise, sorry, kakafne head. So it's a way of praising him, his abilities. Head, chazise l'reishech, I saw your head be'amude, between the beams. Ki Omar Rabbi Yechon lahashmaitze. When Rabbi Yechon said this halacha, I saw your head there. It seems learning the Rashi. It doesn't. I thought that the Pashta Pshat is that it means he's suggesting it looks like, from what you're saying, it looks like you were there when the Rebbe was saying it. This has a slightly different thing. But anyway, so he's praising him. It looks like you were there because Rebbe was saying. The kid said, why? Because you're right. That's Bemis what Rebbe said. That's the Rebbe said. He didn't speak of the whole Eretz Yisrael, only the milas and murders. Okay. Itmanami will not. Another proof. Also, Eruvin Rabbi Yechon. Eruvin said in the name of Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Yechon. The kids said they said it in the name of Rabbi Yechon. Milas u'moedish be'eretz Yisrael in chayal nem shus Rabbim. So the elevations and the inclines on Eretz Yisrael, so then there's not a shus Rabbim because they it's not like the situation in the desert. In the desert, by the Digli Hamidbar, there was no inclines and elevations. It was all smooth. The Onon smoothed out all the mountains and all the valleys. It was going on a straight plain, and therefore the elevations and the inclines in Eretz Yisrael are not considered a Rishus Rabbim because they're not like the Digli Hamidbar. I want to point out over here that later in the Gemara, Rashi and so on, the Rashi points out when learning the Gemara towards the end that this, the Gemara is like this. The Gemara says that the reason why it has a din of Rosh Hashanah, why it doesn't have a din of Rosh Rabbim, because Yeshua made it should be privately owned. The way Yeshua divided the land, that all the inclines and the elevations and the inclines, all the elevation inclines, he made them private property. That's what the Gemara says later. Here we see that the reason is because it's not like Digli HaMidbar, because it's not like in the Midbar. So we have two reasons why the inclines and the elevations are not considered Shus Rabbim, even though the Rabbim are using it, because you live there, you have to use it, they use it. But one is that it's not like similar to the Midbar, and because it's private property. So the two reasons. I'm wondering, the din of Shus Rabbim Shus Yochid has got nothing to do with private property. Shus Rabbim Shus Yochid has to do with the size, the chitzas. That's what it has to do. It does not have to do whether it's privately owned or not. Yet the Gemara later connects it with being privately owned. So it seems to me that that is the combination over here. That if it would be like Digli Hamidbar, normally, the fact that it's private, normally, if the Rabbim are there, if the Rabbim are there, so then then has the Rishus Rabbim. Normally, if the fact that it's privately owned doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference whether it's the status of Rishus Rabbim or Yochid. But since it's not like the Digli Hamidbar, and the elevation, the inclines are not like, so then only in such a situation do we say that if it's privately owned, then if it's privately owned, then the Rabbim cannot be mevatel it, and it's considered Shus Yochid, even though the Rabbim are there, because it's privately owned as well. And therefore, since it has to do I said another important point which I need to make over here is since that it has to do with the fact that it's privately owned, because Yeshua, when he gave it the land, he made it privately owned. Therefore, outside Eretz Yisrael, where the inclines and the elevations are not privately owned, so that even though it's not like the Diglei HaMidbar, so that will, even it is still considered Shirab. If the Rabbi uses it, it could be considered Shirab. And therefore, you will find a few cases in the Gemara where the Gemara speaks about the inclines and the elevations having a din of Rosh Hashanah. Why is that? Because those places which the Gemara speaks about are outside the Eretz Yisrael. The difference between inside the Eretz Yisrael and outside Israel is very clear. The last Rashi before the Mishnah. So that's what we have the Payel, that this whole halacha of the inclines not being Rosh Hashanah is only in Eretz Yisrael and not outside Eretz Yisrael, because there we have the combination of two reasons. I want to say that to combine the two reasons the way I said it is to me a bit of a chiddush. I did not have the time to look in the Rishonim, which one needs to have a look to see if what I said is correct. Okay.
Interesting, but we missed a lot of midrashim.
Let me see. I'm just trying to find a place. That's why I'm making the gap. We're quite behind, but I'll try and make up to learn a bit of some sort of speed. He's asked him such a question. Tell him that means if the amount which the elevation is 10 tefachim within the space of 4 amas, so that's considered a mechitza. If it's within, if it's the incline is less, it's not considered a mechitza. But if the incline is such that it rises 10 tefachim within 4 amas of the space of the 4 amas, that is considered mechitza. But what happens if the rabbin breaking boy? So the lots of so normally it's considered shusayach. Now, what happens if the rabbim are passing through it? So it says, so you ask the question, are you chayav, is it considered shus rabbim or not? Is the rabbim mevatel these types of places, right? The normal mechitza. Yeah. So that's such a type of mechitza. Is the rabbim mevatel? So the Gemara says, according to Rabban, there's no question that they're not mevatel. If in the case of the passing by the well over there, the nichet hashmisha, where it's easy to use, the Rabbanan said, the rabbim cannot be mevatel. The rabbim, they cannot be mevatel the mechitzas. Even though the rabbin using it, but it's with difficulty. It's not pleasant to use because it's an elevation. The kolshkin for sure. There's no question that they're not mevatel mechitzas. Let's remember the principle which I said, that according to the Rabbanan, once you have 4 mechitzas, as long as you have the number 4, you don't need dafka a wall like Rabbi Huda. Once you have the number 4, then the rabbi cannot mevatel, whether it's elevation, whether it's space passing, whichever, all these different combinations of which make mechitzas, it's all okay. Once you have the number 4, the rabbi cannot be mevatel. So therefore here, for sure, it's not mevatel. The whole question was whether the elevation, if the rabbin use that area and they walk through it, if it's and I'm just saying that we need to know the halacha as well, because at the end of the day we see the and Paskan like is mine. This horse of the nichet hashmisha over there. In the case of the wells, it says the rabbin, they are mevatel mechitza. Why? Because maybe it's only nichet hashmisha because it's easy to use. It's not an elevation. It's plain. If it's an incline, which is an incline like that, so since which is not pleasant to use, so therefore in such a case, Rabbi Huda will agree that then the rabbi cannot be. He'll agree to the Rabbanan that the rabbi cannot be mevatel. But Dilman Loishna, well, it doesn't make a difference. He says anyway the rabbi can be mevatel. So Amalei, so he answered him. So Rabbi answered the Rechova. So he said to him, "It's Yechayev. It's considered a shusar. It's considered It's considered the Shus Rabbim. That the Rabbim are Mevatel Mechitzas, even though it's not pleasant. So it's only Chayovim, the Rabbim are Mevatel Mechitzas. Afilo Oilim Bechebel, sorry, even if it's so steep that you need to hold on to a string to walk up. So he asked him, the Rambam Bafal Mechitzas. So he asked him again about Fil Oilim Bechebel, and even if it's so steep that I need a string to help you to get up, even in that case, also the Rambam Bafal Mechitzas. Yeah, he says, yeah, sure. Yeah, even if it's so steep. And they said, I feel about Malas Beis Morin. And what about even the steepness of Malas Beis Morin? There, it was not only steep, but it was so, I guess, narrow or something, that or because of the steepness, they couldn't, only one by one. They couldn't walk two people together. Even two people, just one by one have to go, a single line, they have to go up. So even Miles Beis Morin is also considered contribute, considered the Shus Rabbim. And said yes. Okay, fine. I think I have reached my self-imposed limitation for people to be able to go to Ma'ariv, so I'll stop over here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
So good evening, and
Hashem.